Hello and welcome to the first regular episode of the Small Triumph Sports Library and Archives channel. What? You didn't think I was going to wear a tie in every episode, did you? I like dressing up from time to time, but not that much. First, this is not what I anticipated doing for my first regular episode, but I've quickly learned that it takes a good bit of time, effort, and prep work even to put together the relatively low quality one take videos that I'm doing. And so in the process, I've gained a much deeper appreciation for the YouTube content creators out there whose work I really enjoy. I have several episodes that are in the works right now. This one just happens to be the most ready, and if I'm going to make any effort to keep my schedule of doing approximately one video a week, then I've got to go with what I'm ready to go with. So one of the things I'm going to be doing on this channel is providing updates on my 1969 Triumph GT6 Plus restoration project. If you want the backstory on that car, please check out my introduction video. The short version is that the car has been in my family since the early 1970s, first for a few years with my father, and then with a cousin, and then it came into my possession in the summer of 2020. So I'm in the process of doing a full restoration within the limits of my bank account and my abilities and such. So periodically I'll make videos on what I'm doing with that project. Especially when I think I can provide some interesting or useful information. So here's the car. And I will eventually do some videos of my cars. For some things I do, it's easier to use stills, and I work on the cars in different locations. And so sometimes if I want to show something, I can't just pop out to my garage and take a video of it. So today I'm going to be walking through a number of photographs. So today what I want to start with is providing a little bit of background on my approach to my restoration project before I get into the specific topic for today. So again, this is the car, 1969 Triumph GT6 Plus. It's in its original color, it's conifer green, which was also called Triumph Racing Green in the US. Black interior. This is a picture of the car when I was beginning to gut it. I think you can see some of the carpet there on the bonnet. At this point, the car is completely gutted. The engine and transmission have been removed. And all of that, and some of the paint has been stripped. The problem with this car is not rust, which is arguably the most common problem with a Triumph restoration project, but the problem with this car is accident damage. Before it came into my family, it was in a severe accident in which it was struck in the rear. And it could possibly have been a multi-car accident where it was struck in the rear and then, hit less severely in some other locations. I'm not able to kind of suss out exactly what happened. That's not really in my realm of expertise, so I can't look at the damage and tell you exactly what happened. But I believe based on what I'm seeing, that the most direct impact, hardest and most direct impact was in the passenger side rear corner of the car. So here's a marked up version of the photo to kind of illustrate what I think happened. Again, you can take it with a grain of salt. I'm an English major, but the car was definitely hit in the rear. It definitely caused a buckling, illustrated here by my chevron. Of course, that chevron is more severe than the actual distortion in the car. But that buckling, the pushing in of the boot floor, caused some downforce around the B post. So there's some distortion in the roof line and some distortion in the inner wheel wells. from all of that, as you would kind of expect. You can kind of see how the car was affected here with some of the buckling in the roof line. And again, I think this is the part of the car that was most directly hit. So you can see the buckling there at the post behind the window. You can see the buckling there where the rear of the rear quarter window is. You can see the puckering behind the extractor vent and some of the distortion in the roof line there. You can also see from this photo that the rear quarter was actually split in the original accident, and the craftsman who repaired the car so that it could be put on a lot for sale slathered it over with Bondo. So these are the types of repairs that I'm dealing with. The car was just totally and completely covered in Bondo. So that is the situation with the car overall. There is a lot of work to be done on the back half of the car. I know for a fact that I will be replacing the boot floor, the valance, the rear quarters, and I have patch panels for the inner strengthener for the rear quarters. I also have some patch panels for the rear of the roof line where the extractor vents are. I anticipate replacing some, if not most, of that surface because there's a good bit of distortion in there. And then there's a lot of metal that I hope to save by straightening it out. So there's a lot of work to be done there. I point all this out because my strategy that I came up with last year was that knowing that I have to really completely dismantle the rear of the car and put it all back together again, I thought a good starting point would be to clean up the straightest part of the car, which is really the car from about the middle of the rear wheels forward. That's not perfectly straight, by the way. There's still some distortion that moved up into the front of the car. But for the most part, it's pretty straight. It's very straight compared to the rear of the car. And overall, the saving grace with getting a car with this kind of accident damage is that it was put back on the road. So the most severe of the accidents that the car was in, or the most severe accident the car has been in, occurred before the car came into my family. And the car was, even though the repair work was terrible, the car was put back on the road. Everything fit, not claiming perfectly, but the rear hatch fit, the rear quarter windows fit, everything fit. And the car was driven for thousands and thousands and thousands of miles with this damage. So that means I have at least a halfway decent starting point, even though I have a lot of work to do. So my plan starting last summer was to clean up the front of the body, everything from behind the seats to the bulkhead, try to clean up anything that needed to be cleaned up with that. So I started stripping the floors, stripping the footwells, stripping the bulkhead and all of that. And one of the first things that I decided to take on as a major project was to replace the battery box. I thought this would be a good first project. It's relatively low stakes. It's not overly complicated. And at the time I decided to do this, I had only been welding for 4 or 5 months. And as a relative novice, it seemed like a manageable job. So it's what I decided to kind of take on as the first major project. And it's the first thing that I did on the body of the car outside of filling in a few holes here and there. So I took my time getting the battery box out. I drilled out the spot welds. I do have a spot weld cutter. I didn't want to use it here because it makes bigger holes on the panels I want to reuse than I'd like. So I actually took a relatively dull drill bit and really took my time cutting out the spot welds to kind of minimize the damage to the panels that I'd be still using when I finished the repair. And so it came out pretty well, I think. It was a fairly clean job. I did end up making some holes that I had to patch up, but nothing too bad overall. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video is what I discovered when I got the battery box out. So I got the battery box out, and this is the back of the battery box. This is the part of the battery box that you could see if you bent your head down in the passenger footwell area and looked at it, and you can see it's got green paint on it. However, the side of the battery box facing the driver's side of the car had minimal paint on it. The side of the battery box that is facing the outside of the car had virtually no paint on it, and I discovered that the front of the battery box, part of the battery box up against the bulkhead, had no paint on it, no paint protection at all. I was surprised by this, I guess, just thinking about replacement battery boxes. So a replacement battery box from the factory would have come with red primer on it, and of course the reproduction replacement battery boxes that you can get today, which of course I use to repair my battery box area on my car. I believe they're by Steelcraft. They come with a black E-coat on them. So replacement battery boxes would come with some level of protection, but it seems like, if not in general, certainly in the case of my car, that the battery box was spot welded in bare metal, and then whatever got paint on it when the car was painted got paint on it. If you know these cars very well, you know that there's very little space between the front of that battery box and the bulkhead. And so you can't really, easily spray up in there, and it just got no paint on it at the factory. So one of the key reasons I wanted to do this video was to kind of share that. I'm curious as to whether other people found the same situation when they removed their battery boxes. So after I removed the battery box, I decided to clean up the bulkhead, particularly the top area of the bulkhead area where the battery box and the master cylinders are. So I sanded, I did some sandblasting, tried to get all the rust out. I'm not a big believer in rust converters. I think most of the testing of rust converters shows that they don't really work all that well. They're better than nothing, particularly in areas where you can't get into, cavities you can't get into and things like that. But obviously the best way to deal with rust is to do everything you can to get rid of all of it and then quickly coat it. And so that was what I tried to do here. So I got all the rust. There's typically a lot of moisture around the master cylinders in particular, so that's really where most of the rust was, but it wasn't anything bad, just a little bit of pitting here and there. So I got it all cleaned up, and then I proceeded to spray it with epoxy primer. Just to let you know what an amateur I am, my first spray out on here went very badly. I was using rattle cans. And I'm not sure what exactly happened. I do know when I started to spray, it got a little breezy. I don't think that helped. I also tried to go all the way across the car, kind of going over the wheels and the frame, and it's kind of difficult to keep the can at a good distance with some of the shapes in there anyway. But the bottom line is I ended up with a very kind of grainy texture. And that was very frustrating because I had to sand it down and redo it. And it was a lot of extra work and a lot of lost time. By the way, before I did that, I sprayed far more successfully the passenger side footwell, so that everything underneath the battery box would be covered and protected. And I had to redo the bulkhead. I redid it. I used a slightly different product, the same product that I used in the footwell, and it turned out pretty nicely the second time. So the story ends happily, but it really did take a lot of extra work. Very recently, I went ahead and welded in the new battery box. So this is what that looks like. Used a lot of spot welds across the front. I think the factory used 7. I clearly used more. I'd hoped to be able to do some spot welds on the sides, on the right side of this photo. But the spot welder that I got, a Harbor Freight unit, did not have the reach really to get there. So I ended up doing plug welds around the other 3 sides. And of course, I plug welded the gussets in as well. It's not a professional job by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm pretty happy with it. It's not bad for amateur work. I think when I'm finished getting it cleaned up and primed and seam sealed, it'll be okay. I did have a couple of problems. The corners of the battery box really didn't go down as well. They seemed to come up when I was plug welding around the corners a little bit. Hammered them down. It's going to require some seam sealer there. And there's one plug weld on the sides that I wasn't happy with. I seemed to get a little bit of metal between the 2 surfaces there. So I'll have to use a little more seam sealer than I'd like, or have to rely on seam sealer a little more than I'd like. But overall, I'm going to call it a win as a rank amateur. I think it's in there. It's in there. It's in there strongly, and I think it's going to look okay when I'm finished with it. So there's that. All right, so that's where things stand right now with that project. I have a lot to do with it. My plans are for this spring and summer to get the body off the frame and really start tearing down the rear of the car. I've had a lot of discussions about how to best do that, because I can't really do a traditional rotisserie, because I've got to actually take all the panels off the back of the car, and I got to figure out a way to support the car so that I can get into the areas I need to straighten things out. The inner wheel wells are going to require some straightening. The tunnel where the differential is going to require some straightening. So it's going to be interesting, kind of cooking up a strategy for handling that. May not have another update on this project for a few months. I don't know. We'll see. But I do have some other episodes in the works. So hopefully you'll hang in there. Hopefully you're enough of a Triumph nerd to have some interest in what I'm trying to do here. But I do have a video coming up on a Triumph factory tool. I have a video coming up that is a book review, and I have a couple of other things in the works too. So we'll see how long it takes me to actually get those things out. Thanks for watching. I am going to try to have another video up in about a week, so please be on the lookout for that.